All right, this is a Prescott City Council study session. Today is Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. I want to thank you all for attending this. I hope you found an appropriate seat for you and you have enough space. So thank you all for attending, and we'll start with a roll call.
Mayor Good.
President.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Here.
Councilwoman Kentelme.
Here.
Councilman Montoya.
Here.
Councilman Moore.
Here.
Councilman Sischka.
Here.
And Councilman Tenney.
Here.
All are present.
Excellent. So we'll start with discussion.
Update from the Mayor's Commission on Water Policy Review and Monitoring.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It does feel like there'll be just an echo in this room. It's very quiet today.
I do want to recognize Michael Taylor for being one of the commissioners on the commission and being in attendance. So thank you, Michael.
Absolutely. I'm Leslie Grazer. I'm with Public Works. I'm staff liaison with Mary Kay Wissanan for the Mayor's Commission on Water Policy Review and Monitoring. To start off, I'd like to say thank you for a really great group of people that I'm working with. They're working diligently to meet the goal that you've set before them. And as you identified, we do have Mr. Michael Taylor here. We had other members that would have liked to join us, such as the chairman, but they had conflicting meetings or appointments, as they're all business people. Well, we have one retiree, maybe, or two, but still, they're busy. Okay, so let's just look at the background. I know you had these slides ahead of time, so I won't spend too much time on them, but what was said was that the Mayor's Commission for Water Policy Review was established in May 22. The purpose for establishing the Mayor's Commission on Water Policy and Review Monitoring is for the review and monitoring of the city's updated water policy that was adopted April 26, 22. And then the other details that come out of your code as to how these commissions are organized. So your roster, I just put that up on the screen. I think you know most of these folks, but your chairman is Mr. Jim Lamerson, a former councilman. Vice chairman is Bob Brecker, also a former councilman. And we have members Beverly, Haley, Krupnick, Taylor, and Warab. So at this point, we've had the pleasure of meeting 4 times for a total of 4 hours. So please understand that this update will be brief because there's only so much you can do in 4 hours together. But these are the meeting dates we've had so far, including one last week. So the challenge. When it comes to water, using the graphic here, it's an ocean. There's so much to talk about. But we needed to point them to water policy. And then if you just look at a molecule of water, that's like 4.7 times 10 to the 20th molecules in one drop of water. And that's part of our challenge. Even though we're looking at just the policy, there's so many things that the commission members bring up. What about this? Can we look at that? And so we're slowly going through that to capture important comments, be fair in what we can respond to immediately and what might be something for another day. So to organize ourselves, we put forth these 4 questions of how will you define what makes the document effective? Which parts of the document do you plan to focus on to review and monitor? What do you propose to do to monitor these parts? Which data, which tables you want? What kind of tracking are you thinking of? How are those parts and the overall document tracked and presented to determine effectiveness? I could see right off the bat, we would have people who would deem it effective from one perspective, and it might not be effective in another. So a lot of the initial meetings were just to get us all organized and moving together. And we'll walk through those to look at that a little bit more. So as you can imagine, the June meeting, the first meeting, was just basic introduction, so everybody would feel comfortable, understanding of our operation and procedures, so we didn't have any glitches from either an open meeting law standpoint or otherwise. And then they had homework to review the policy and note what should be monitored. So I think a lot of them came prepared and had already read it, but we needed to point. You should be looking at what do you think should be monitored for effectiveness. July 19th, the chairman had asked from staff that we provide a briefing on water history, and we wanted to tie that as closely to the Prescott water supplies, of course, as possible, because otherwise you're in the ocean and not on the policy. And then there were those questions I just showed, and I'm showing them again, of where staff formulated the plan to move this group in a pattern or in a process that would lead to an outcome. So we did that, and they had homework again. And what they attempted to do, which was a lot, was take care of questions 1, 2, and 3. And so mostly it was 1 and 2 that were pretty solid. We had one member that gave a whole list for, what to monitor, which parts do you really want to look at. And so we're still working on that one. Okay. The 16th. So we started reviewing and really focusing on 1 and 2. And then we had limited time that day and weren't able to get to question 3. So to sort through their work, they had more homework. And they were given their responses, the feedback they had already given. They hadn't seen each other's information. We put that into a format where they could rank and said, tell me what you think is the most important. And that's one of many ways you can work on things. And then just last week, September 20th, we did a little more focus and we put it more to a discussion and a potential action to see what else would come out related to questions 1 and 2. And jokingly, yes, there is still more homework to do. So I think there was concern at the last meeting that we were moving ahead in a definitive direction. And it was very clear from the commission that they said, we're not ready yet. We think there's more. And I was nodding along. We have more to do. So, question 1, what came out of that? Kind of those top, we did a ranking of 1 to 5, the top 3 that we saw mostly from the folks that were able to respond was effectiveness of the document should be determined if it has the effect to, and this comes straight out of the policy itself, support reasonable growth and development, particularly infill development where feasible in accordance with the adopted general plan, and to support ADWR's goals and management strategies to work towards safe yield. And that's actually a lot going on in those sentences. And so we broke that down as staff a little bit more because does everybody know what the general plan boundary looks like? Does everybody know ADWR's goals and management strategies? You'll hear safe yield, but then you'll hear overdraft. And so we tried to carefully go through that, introduce the water resource management model a little bit to do so through static pictures. The next was everybody kind of ranked this towards the top, determine what isn't in the policy and what should be. And so effectiveness can be looked at relative to something else. So relative to the previous policy adopted in 2019, is it more or less effective? Why? And then we looked and we stretched, looking into the Tucson area, they have a water management plan that extends for 50 years. And from that, different policies, are developed and procedures to meet those long-term goals of that municipality. So of course, we don't match exactly, but they're also a designated water provider. There might be elements of that water policy. When we looked at the table of contents, and that's all we did, it was a relative look again. Relative to Tucson, are there things in their document that you think would be important here? So we're keeping that one on the table. And then the last one that rose up from the comments that we received back from the group was water use is adequately and frequently monitored. Okay, moving along, we got to question 2, which parts of the document should be focused on to review and monitor? So this was last week, and I put a big draft on this because this generated a lot of discussion. So the commission had 17 recommendations to rank when I had their information back. We even had one person just respond, all these are important. All 17 are important. And so it was a little too early to dive into this too much, but what I saw was certain policies rise to the top and even all policies from 1 to 22. So we're still working, of course, on this. So what are those other 17? So I captured those for you. We want to talk conservation measures. We want to talk Big Chino, the worm, contract or use that is greater than the contract volume, landscape, permanent recharge, continued growth and safe yield, and assured water supply. So here we are back in the ocean a little bit, and we need to pull back and see which pieces really help in making the determination that you're seeking. Is this policy effective now and into the future? So, question 3, that's where everything kind of stopped, but this is, you just read the center of the slide, we want data. I have heard that a lot. So there are data sets that are readily available that we can start tagging to potentially these different policies or questions. In other cases, the data is not being collected. So this, from my standpoint, here we go, we have a matrix again, and we start lining things out, saying what we have and we don't have, and seeing how this group responds to these things. But as a data example, and I jokingly put at the top, but they want a lot more data. This is one example. So this is available on the city's website. It's updated on the first and third Wednesday, and this solely tracks your water budget portion of the policy. So that's policies 11 through 13. This is slightly dated, so this number has gone to 2, and this has jumped a little bit here. But if you're not familiar, but I have a sneaky feeling you are, I'll just take a quick look. It's available on the city's website, and you can look at the projects that have been approved in both residential and non-residential. And then you can look at the projects under existing contract as well. So if you recall from your policy, if it was something that had been contracted before the policy, so that could be some of your larger efforts that were made in the previous elected body. Some of you are here, some of you aren't, but you recognize which ones those are. Those are moving on through. So there's no stop or review necessarily on those. Those just move on through. But this captures what that looks like. So right now this is residential units 84 and the associated volume. So the point I think that is important is that number is not being subtracted from your 25 that you have allocated for each area. So let me close this down. I think we are just about at the we are at the last slide. So where are we going? The next steps. So we're going to keep the commission's direction as noted on slide 7. Those are those terms or ways they wanted to look at effectiveness. So relative to the policy statement itself, and then is it adequately doing things that they think it should be doing? Question 2, we're going to continue to work on that to process which parts should be assessed. This could be section by section. This could be by policy number. Received a lot of feedback when the group went into a discussion mode last time. And 3, this will also take some additional time, so I'll start lining out those things in a matrix of, yes, that data is available, or no, we don't have data related to that at this time. It's in the policy, but, you know, it just, the city's not there yet to track that necessarily. They have their upcoming meetings for the rest of the year, 3 more. And then the next council update you would receive, if we stay quarterly, would be December 13th or 27th. I'm guessing you're probably not meeting on the 27th, so it's probably going to be the 13th. If that session is full, then it could be January 10th. So that's when you would see more from this group, or at any time you have questions. We're happy as staff to answer those. And that's it for your update. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Leslie. I anticipated that this would be a very brief briefing, since most of the information and the questions and the concerns of the commission were really more related on foundational information. I made a comment to the commission as a whole that there are some members on here who've been studying and working on water issues for literally decades. And then some other members who, even though they're kind of local and engaged in a lot of business activities, they haven't really been monitoring the water policy closely enough to really be fully familiar with it. So and that was intentional. I wanted to have some representatives on this commission that weren't just the local water monitoring people, but that would represent different parts of the community so that they could actually be maybe a spokesperson to their community network, so that when questions were asked about what this policy's impact would be on growth and development in other areas, they were probably the people that they would reach out to. So I wanted to make sure we took it a little bit slow and made sure everybody had a solid foundation of information. And then I really liked the idea of establishing some data benchmarks. So being able to utilize the WRM, the Water Resource Management Model, and then being able to establish certain usage numbers that are current, and then as this policy develops and as some of these pre-contracted uses work their way through the process, then you'll be able to measure whether the policy is doing what it's intended to do, whether it needs to be modified. As you mentioned, Tucson is pretty well recognized as having a very effective water management policy down in the southern part of the state, and there's no reason why we can't take a look at what they're doing, and maybe parts of it could be applicable to our policy and could be adopted. So either added to it or maybe modified current components of our policy. So that's really what the whole intention was. I know we had a couple of members that wanted to really expand this way beyond what the original scope and intention was. They wanted to be looking at the impact of the Verity River flow, talking about the impact of the Prescott AMA. And I just had to say, you know, this commission is to look at the policy that we've adopted here in the city and be able to make sure that it does what it's intended to do, and then maybe make it even more effective. So kind of reel those concerns back in and keep it focused on what we want to do here within the city. So I think so far we're kind of achieving those goals.
Working towards them, I believe, yes.
And you've got your decision and order still waiting to be determined. And the situation between SRP and our water resource management and our assured water supply status will certainly come into effect as those final numbers and as the department makes its determination. So, you know, that's a little bit down the road, but I think it's supposed to be around December, isn't it?
In all fairness, we are a little bit on a hold right now because we have a deficiency letter, which we're in good company because everybody gets a deficiency letter on their application, and so we're preparing the response at this time. So we'll see where they move next with the processing of our application. Yeah.
Very good. Any other Councilman?
Either way. You go ahead.
You know, this is the way it used to be when we'd come to a four-way stop in traffic. No, you go.
Way better than crashing into each other, isn't it?
Okay, Councilman Montoya.
Fine. I just, a real quick question of clarity here, Leslie. I was looking at the numbers that you're showing, and I was doing some quick math. Am I seeing this right? It looks like we've, under the water budget we have in the new policy, it's about 17.76 acre feet that's been allocated between residential and commercial.
I believe that's what I saw too. Let's see.
25. And then
Residential and non-residential?
yeah, or no, I'm sorry. I guess is that
22.
22? Okay,
Yes.
22. I'm sorry. So I
Out of
did.
50.
Okay, and then 22, and then on the under contract water, was it 40.77? Or no, I'm sorry, was that 20? Maybe that was, I'm just curious. What I'm trying to drive at is how much water, what is the percent of the water we've allocated, how much has been done under contract and not under the budget? That's what I'm trying to drive towards. I'm just
Gotcha.
curious.
17, I
17.7.
think that's where you picked up the 17, yeah.
Okay.
18 if we round.
18, okay.
Yep.
So a good deal more.
For residential units.
And those are all residential, or they're,
And that's what it says here, yeah. residential.
Do we track commercial in the contract allocation, under contract allocation?
I don't think so. Not if there's a contract, if it's,
So if there's a contract, we track it. Most of the contracts are for residential uses.
I would assume so.
Be very few for commercial.
Okay. That was it. I just want to make sure I was looking at the numbers correctly. Thank you for correcting me.
Councilman Tenney.
Thank you. So Leslie, quick question for you. As far as your next council update, I noticed that of your 3 alternate dates that you've got there, one, like you say, is probably a date that we're unlikely to meet, but December 13th would be after you've had 2 more additional meetings as a committee, and January 10th would be after you've had 3 more additional meetings as a committee. Which do you think would be most effective, to wait until you've had 3, or to go ahead and update us again after
we're
2 more
roughly on
meetings?
schedule for a quarterly. January would be fine. So I'm not sure we had some amazing breakthrough in the next 2 months. And
Could demand to
be
heard
it would be
on
up to the
December
clerk as to
13th?
how
Okay.
the things are being scheduled, in the December timeframe. So we're flexible, whatever works best to bring you the best we can at the right time.
Okay, thanks.
I think the 27th and the 10th would be council days.
So, excuse me, Mayor, we don't have a meeting on December 21st because of the holidays. Our December meetings are December 13th and December 20th.
What about January?
January 10th is a council meeting day, correct?
Yeah. So you might want to modify that.
Yeah, I just took the 2nd and 4th, and I haven't seen any updates, so I'll refer to my supervisor if there's changes. Otherwise, I don't know about them. Okay.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
I'd like to ask a question of Michael Taylor. Michael, what do you think of this process so far, and where do you think it's going?
Your updates.
I was afraid you were going to have me come up and say something. Well, first off, let me say thanks to the mayor for inviting me to be on the commission. It is important, I think, to have a good cross-section of people on a commission like this that's supposed to determine the effectiveness. I also want to thank Leslie and Mary Kay for their work. They're taking a pretty discontiguous group of people and trying to bring it together, so they've really been great. I think that the process is working well. When I first started this, when the mayor asked me to be on the committee, I thought, this is easy. The goal is stated in the policy. All we have to do is follow that. But there is so much more to this than I initially knew. And at this point, it's really about information gathering and trying to figure out what direction we're going to move forward. I actually felt like in the last meeting that happened. It felt like there was a little cohesiveness where we came together and realized that we need more data before we can move forward as a body. So I think it's effective so far, and I have great hopes for the future.
So do you feel that looking at water providers like Tucson is a valuable exercise, and are you going to look at more cities like that are water providers?
I think that the brief glimpse that we got of Tucson's policy was eye-opening, and I hope that we will dive into that one a little bit more. I think there are definitely things we can glean from those other cities. We haven't spoken about any other cities at this point, but Tucson's is a great example, and I do think that it will shed good light on what we're trying to do here.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Thank you, Michael.
My button's been disabled by you, probably. Doesn't work.
Would you like to be recognized?
It's too late now.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask Mr. Taylor to make a few comments, but you've already made them. My little button here was disabled somehow, so I'm a little late.
I turned
But
it off.
Thank you. I think it was a consensus, I'm sure, a group effort.
I'm sure you can come up with another question, Mayor Pro Tem.
No, I just wanted to thank you and the committee members for tackling this project. And I think working with the City Council, the Water Issues Subcommittee, all together, I think we'll do a wonderful job monitoring our water use. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have any public comment?
No, Mayor.
Any further concerns or questions? Well, Leslie, thank you for the update, and like I said, I knew it would be quite brief, and I'm sure future updates later in the year or possibly the first of next year will probably have a little more substance to them. Just like Michael was saying that, I think the commission is starting to kind of come together with their understanding of the fundamental issues, and then as they start deliberating on those and maybe looking at some additional information, then we can expect to see some more valuable recommendations or updates.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. So this study session is adjourned.
Thank you.